asked me to step in today for him. Our first agenda item is to go into executive session. Could I have a motion for the FFT committee to go into executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA section 405.6-C to discuss the condition, acquisition, or disposition of real property, economic development, if premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of UMS. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Kane, seconded by
Second.
trustee Flood. And we'll do the roll call for the vote and the attendance. How's that, Kayla?
Sounds great. Trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
and let me check to see if trustee Mishu is not on. So the motion carries.
Great. Then and welcome trustee Alexander, who's participating today. And we will go into executive session. Do we need to go into a separate room?
We are in one moment, and you'll opening the room.
Great.
quick note for those who were waiting for us to come back. We're going to take just a quick couple-minute break and then join you for the rest of the public session. Apologize. I don't think anyone let you know that. We'll be right back.
Good morning, everybody. We are taking a break and people should be convening soon. Kayla, you'll keep me posted when we have a quorum, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Always a problem to give people a break. Yeah, Pat, David.
I don't see trustee Kane.
No. David and Pat. Can we text her?
And we do have trustee Alexander.
We might have to make her a temporary member of the committee.
Yes. And there she is.
Emily is here.
No, but Barbara is.
Barbara, I hope you, as chair, I get to appoint committees. May I appoint you to a temporary position on the FFT committee?
Be careful what you ask for.
That's why I
Yes,
said,
I will be happy to serve. I'm available till noon today.
with that, we have a quorum, and I welcome everybody to the public session of the FFT committee, noting that Chair Cates is away and asked me to take the helm and do my best to try to do the excellent job that he always does. So with that, we have a number of presentations, very important presentations today before us. And with shock of shocks, we're going to start with Dave Demers, who has always been our cleanup guy who can do a report in record time. And we thought it only appropriate, Dave, to give you the full time and begin with you to review IT projects.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I don't know what to do with the full 20 minutes, so this will be interesting. But thank you all for your attendance, and I will go through our project report. I am going to also add something that I haven't had an opportunity in the past to get into this particular report, and that is looking at the current log of existing IT projects. So I typically report on the big ones, and that has been and focused on repaving Main Street as of late. But truly, our IT projects and professional services team, which is small but mighty, does have a relatively large log of ongoing projects that are captured in our actual dashboard. They are responsible for managing our active portfolio of projects, and at any one time of the year, they will have a portfolio of anywhere between 12 to 15, sometimes up to 20 concurrent projects that they are managing at any one time. So the chart that I'm showing you here is the current project list that we have, where what we're representing is by project initiation year. So we have some that go all the way back to 2019, and I'll give you one guess which one that is. And then each year we add additional projects, we spin down others as they come to completion, but not all of them meet the threshold for reporting to the FFT committee. So I don't want to give the impression that this team doesn't do a lot of work, because they certainly do their fair share, and we are very grateful for the services and their stewardship on a lot of these projects. I do want to note that there is an active dashboard that anyone could check if you so were inclined. There is the ability to report out by status and slice and dice the current projects based on start date, end date, who's responsible for it, which campus or campuses are participating in it. And then we break it down also by particular status. And you will see that we do have one project there that is in red status, and that is related to the repaving Main Street project. And we'll talk a little bit more, particularly about the HCM, the HR cloud configuration, and where we are in terms of trying to get that up and running on our timeline for July of next year. So again, just sharing for general knowledge that we do have a very active team in this regard. So moving over to the repaving Main Street project, this is the slide that I usually use to introduce the topic. It really summarizes what we are trying to do. It is comprised of a couple of different elements, notably migrating our HR and our finance modules, which are currently running in PeopleSoft on-prem in a data center in Orono, and moving those to a SaaS environment through Oracle Cloud Tools. Those two elements will achieve a level of consistency and automation and efficiency that we just don't have the ability to realize with the current PeopleSoft environment. And this will go in concert with what we are doing to overhaul our student information system and building that up from the ground to recognize what we are aiming to achieve via unified accreditation, and really taking advantage of building more collaboration opportunities and pipelines for students to pursue academic programming at multiple campuses through the student information system, which we cannot do today with the way it's structured. In terms of the core elements of the repaving Main Street project, we have two cloud implementations which are going on concurrently, and that, as I said, is the HR environment and our finance environment, so HCM and ERP respectively. And I will report out on where we are with each one of those. In addition to that, we are also now in the process of evaluating the core recommendations that we have from our implementation partner on the Campus Solutions Reimplementation Plan. And that committee that's responsible for reviewing those recommendations will be building out that project plan. So we're at an exciting time for that, if not maybe an overwhelming time as well. But in terms of the cloud projects, as I said previously, we have two concurrent tracks going on, HR and the ERP implementations, and those are presented on top of each other on the chart here. A few months ago, we did agree to move the HRs to go live to coincide with the ERP go live for July of next year. There are several benefits to that, but notably, we did not have the capacity internally within the University Made system and within our HR partners and the staff working in that environment to get it up and running in a more compressed timeline, which would have looked at December of this year. So we did delay that, but there are going to be some benefits, particularly on the payroll side, to having those two going live at the same time. So let's talk about where we are in terms of those two particular projects. On the HR side, we have really been focusing on getting things up for our second application build, or application 2 review. This is where end users are able to go into the cloud environment and test out functions and features with data that we have migrated from our current HR environment. We have pushed, I should say, the start date for the HCM App 2 reviews to early November. We're currently on track to get to that point, and we'll be able to start actually seeing real data, real people in real positions within the HR environment, so folks can go in and start testing some of the functionality and find what's working for us and what isn't working for us. We are finalizing some of the configurations, particularly around achieving efficiency and optimization of business processes. For instance, streamlining the position requisition approval process within the HR environment is going to be a key thing for us to focus on. And we have campuses that have many, many steps, up to a dozen steps. In some campuses, they're a little bit more streamlined. We're trying to get them all whittled down to 4 or 5 steps, approval steps, to get the process done as quickly as possible. So we're moving and making headway in that regard. We are also looking at bringing student employment into the HR environment. So right now that is done with a third-party tool. We will be able to take advantage of some of the benefits of having this cloud environment allowing us to post positions for student employees and allowing students to apply for them directly through the system and tying it directly to a GL account, which is critical for our success going forward. So all of that is work that's ongoing. On the ERP side, we are heading toward our first, well, we've already wrapped up the first application build review. We are making some tweaks to the configuration design, particularly around our chart of account structure, which will be incorporated into our second application build for the ERP side of the house. That is that second build, and the review sessions for that second build will also begin in early November. So the two projects will be sort of going on side by side in terms of the timing of when the application builds and the review process, and when the end users can go in and test these features and functions will occur concurrently in both of them. One thing I didn't make abundantly clear is that there's a much more sharing of data between the cloud-enabled HCM and ERP solutions than we have in PeopleSoft today. A good example of that is department structure. In our PeopleSoft environment, departments are defined separately in both the HR environment and on the finance side of the house. In the cloud environment, the department structure is shared between both. So that forces us to have more consistency in what we call departments, how we structure them, and how the budgets are tied to those departments. Again, it will yield benefits in the long run, but it requires us to have a slightly different way of thinking about things and building out business processes as a result of that. But I'm pleased with where we're going in terms of coordinating those efforts and taking advantage of some of the features that will be available to us in this new environment. That last note on the bottom there, we've had an opportunity, I would say, to take a closer look at how we integrate our purchasing and expense modules. Right now, we use third-party tools for both of those. So we use Jagger for our purchasing module and Concur for our expense module. We will continue to use those in this particular build as we migrate to the cloud for the Oracle solutions. However, this is going to give us an opportunity to streamline some of the processes, some of the data integrations that go back and forth between these environments. It's a little overly complex at the moment, but we have had an opportunity to bring a consultant in, and that is led by our procurement team, and they are doing a great job of identifying opportunities for us to build within this cloud migration project so that we will be able to have more consistency and greater efficiency across the board. So in terms of some key critical business decisions and things that are causing some strain, particularly on our schedule on the HR side, I think I had mentioned previously that we were looking to incorporate student recruitment and student employment into the HR environment. I think we have been able to demonstrate the capabilities of the HCM environment for those end users, and we are working on the specifications for making that a reality for our go live. The final workflow design for new position requisitions and offers is awaiting final sign-off. But again, we've had the ability to whittle down the number of steps and have more consistency across the campuses to really achieve more efficiency in getting those requisitions approved across the board. On the benefits side, we are still looking at options for how we might leverage services available to us, particularly around voluntary contributions with TIAA and having that outsourced to them. So again, that's just something that we have to understand what we will actually have from TIAA, and that will inform how we manage benefits on the HCM side. And in the payroll space, we're still working out the final configuration for how we cost payroll. And that just means how we break payroll down by chart field in the budget environment so that individuals are paid from the right accounts and that we account for them appropriately. That is perhaps the most detailed, the work that requires the greatest amount of detailed thinking, and it sometimes goes over my head, but luckily we have excellent specialists in our payroll environment that do understand how to make that work and how to optimize that process. We are also looking at including student work study distribution categories into that design that ties to the student recruitment piece, and that we are actually working to sign off, get final sign off on that actual design. And then on the ERP purchasing expenses integration, as I mentioned, we do have Huron, who has come in and helped us from a consultant perspective to really guide us in terms of how we integrate our current purchasing and expenses modules, those third-party tools, to take advantage of what's available in the Oracle Cloud solution. So all of these things are contributing to putting pressure on the status of our ongoing schedule for the project. But at the end of the day, we are aiming to do this right rather than fast. So we will need to be a little bit flexible with our go live date potentially, but we will continue to work on this as we go forward and keep an eye on it through the project team. In terms of the risks, As I mentioned previously, we did previously extend the HR go live timeline to coincide with our ERP go live for July of 2024. And that may sound like a long time off, but it is coming at us faster than a freight train. We do need to keep an eye on any slippage because that will create a higher significant risk to our actual go live date. We still are experiencing some staff capacity limitations on our side of the fence. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that we are relying on people who have full-time jobs and are working in departments that have maybe some openings that are limiting their capacity to devote the time necessary to participate in this project to help us move things forward. To address that, we are looking at additional options for staff augmentation through third-party solutions, particularly in our payroll area. And that team has been severely constrained with some staff turnover and just having the ability with the influx of new employees at the start of the fall semester and now gearing up for benefits. It just is creating a lot of pressure on that team to participate and engage as necessary to meet the deadlines that have been imposed on them through this project. So we remain cognizant of that, and we want to be empathetic and try to work with them to figure out what can we offload from them so that they can help us in moving this project forward. So we are working with Carolyn Dorsey and the new HR director to actually move forward with some of these options and figure out how to make it work. On the ERP go live side, as I mentioned previously, we are still experiencing some staff constraints as well. The fiscal year closeout, the financial audit are all things that occur around this time of the year. So getting their engagement has been a little bit of a challenge, and that's understandable, but we just need to navigate it and keep an eye on it as we move forward. And then also understanding the recommendations that Huron will come forward with. We have to be able to take their feedback and incorporate it into our business plan and our model for developing the integrations between Jagger and Concur. That will have an impact potentially in our timeline as well, but it's really an opportunity for us to optimize and create greater efficiency in that system. So I think that might be a benefit in the end of the day. The updated project plan with an updated timeline, we're still working out some of the ways to evaluate some of the challenges that I just mentioned. And I'm hoping to be able to bring that back to this team with maybe a recommendation for another revision of the timeline as we work out how to map and navigate all of these challenges that I just mentioned. Before I jump to the Campus Solutions reimplementation, since I do have a little bit of time, I'm happy to address any questions that anyone might have on the cloud implementation side.
Any questions? I can't see you all, so just jump in.
I will continue to go then, Chair Riley.
Thanks, Dave.
So on the Campus Solutions reimplementation, we have achieved a rather exciting milestone. So our timeline looks a little nebulous because we need to have the recommendations to understand how we are going to overhaul the system. So over the past year, we have been engaging with our implementation partner to conduct a series of business process assessments. I did mention that during the last update. We do now have final delivery of those BPA documents, and now we have turned that over to our steering committee for the Campus Solutions Reimplementation Project, and they are currently reviewing that documentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. In addition to that, we continue to have conversations with how we are going to parse out Maine Law as an independent institution within the Campus Solutions environment, so that those students will have their own branded experience and have their ability to do their business transactions out from under the umbrella of one of the other institutions. That requires a little engineering, but I think we're making good headway. At the same time, we're doing the opposite with the University of Maine and the University of Maine in Machias, particularly around admissions processing. So we have been working with that team to figure out how to streamline and consolidate the admissions process for those students so that they have a unified experience going in, and we are able to tag them appropriately depending on which campus that they will be matriculating at. We are in the process of rolling out the final production changes that are going to be required for our fall 24 recruitment cycle. So work is making good progress on that one. In terms of our Campus Solutions for implementation, we have taken advantage of an existing team that has been in place across the system for a number of years, and that's our Student Services Steering Committee. They have agreed to take on the responsibility as the Campus Solutions Reimplementation Core Team. The advantage of that is that when we get done with this process, when we complete the reimplementation, they become the de facto governance group that will oversee the ongoing maintenance and maybe phase 2 changes for the Campus Solutions environment. So that team is currently reviewing those BPA documents that have been delivered to them, and we are working with them to come up with ways to collect their feedback so that we can build out our actual project timeline and the work that will commence as we kick off that process. So as I said, ERPA has done a series of sessions over the past year. Their documentation that they deliver to us includes 374 individual technical adjustments that they have recommended to us, and that is spread across 315, or I'm sorry, in addition to 315 unique customizations. So these are things we have built into the Campus Solutions environment, and they have given us feedback on whether those customizations are going to be necessary, whether we should modify them, or whether we want to consider other solutions. Those are spread across 24 total business process groupings, including the usual suspects like academic advising, admissions, financial aid. And also they have grouped them under the various menu items that a student has access to in Main Street. So we have 271 individual Main Street menu items where all of those recommendations fall. So it's a lot of information for that group to parse through, and we have tried to work with them to take the documentation that the ERPA has given us, and I walked through this last time, but given the working team a way to evaluate them more holistically. So one of the things we are building for that group is a working concept document where they can actually go through and see each one of the individual recommendations, and they will be able to see the rating based on the priority of how that particular working recommendation might have an impact in terms of the efficacy for the student and the effort that it would be required on the UMS side to actually put that into place. So we've been able to do these scorings so that the team has something to respond to and look to use to prioritize the work that will commence. So this is an example for the student advisement where everything is documented, and then the individuals will have the ability to go in, provide their commentary and maybe some additional documentation that they want to reference. So it's all captured in one place. And then at the end of the day, they'll be able to take each one of these individual recommendations and categorize them into various buckets. So this is just an example where we have a couple of student advisement recommendations that have been categorized, one at a low priority, one at a medium priority, one at high priority. And you can see the priority score that appears along with that. So this is going to be an interactive dashboard that that core working team will be able to use to help us understand what's the low-hanging fruit, what do we want to tackle first, and what dependencies are going to be required that we do in order to pull off each one of these recommendations. That will form the actual project plan, and that will allow us to figure out how long it's going to take to do what we need to do and when we will start to realize some of the benefits from moving forward in this particular fashion. So it's a lot of work going on behind the scenes and a lot of people participating in this, and we have been very pleased with the engagement we've had thus far, and everyone seems to be excited about the opportunities. I don't know that they realize the work that we're talking about and pulling it off, but at the end of the day, it will benefit our students. So that gives me hope that everyone will remain engaged thus far. So with that, that is a whirlwind overview of where we are with this particular project, and I am happy to address any questions that anyone might have.
Questions for Dave Demers? Dave, can I just, this may not be a question for you. You noted the UMaine Machias integration. Is that a savings? It's certainly more efficient, I suspect.
In terms of IT licensing costs, there will be no savings associated with it. It will create some efficiencies that may benefit and realize some operational savings from the UMaine perspective, but certainly not from a technical perspective. No savings to be derived.
Okay. Trustee Flood.
Thank you. Hi, David. And David, I just had a question about I think I got this right, the Oracle Cloud, the hiring and the accounting projects that on the repaving Main Street that seem to be, you've extended out the timeline issues appropriately, so it seems. But do you have, are the core group of people that you rely on? Do you still have that core group of people? You mentioned some personnel issues and so forth. Do you have the key people in place to help you get to those extended timelines that you have now?
I'll be careful on how I answer that. The answer is yes, we have those people, those experts. It's just whether they have the bandwidth to engage as necessary for the project purposes. Because like I said, they have 10 other daytime jobs that they have to do as well. So we're competing with them with those demands for their engagement in some of these areas. So that's why we're looking at some staff augmentation opportunities, particularly in the payroll space, to free up some key resources there so that we make the right decisions that are going to benefit us in the long term in this environment. And we offload some of the things that may be bogging them down from a daily activity type of perspective so that they can actually participate more fully in the project. But it is a challenge. So we have them, but we don't have them at the same time.
So, David, in terms of those delays, understandable that you're stretching people thin. What are and you noted it as a risk, what are the potential implications? Because obviously, and as I recall, there's no redundant system. So the transition to make this work requires a lot of education, I suspect.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And there's a lot of synergy between the two. So it's not like we can say, well, we're going to go forward with these 4 elements of the HR environment and these 2 elements of the ERP environment. There's a lot of dependencies back and forth between them. So there are some things that just need to go live at the same time. So we're in the process right now of working with our implementation partner on building out what those actual dependencies are and what the impact is going to be on our go live potential if we slip past these actual deadlines. So we've done a good job at bucketing them in larger frameworks, but we need a more granular breakdown to say if we don't have this integration design between, let's say, Jagger and the ERP environment, if that is not done by December 31st of this year, that is going to have an impact on our ability for the ERP to go live because we're waiting on that to drive the payroll costing piece. So there's a lot of dependencies that need to be mapped out so we have a better understanding what the domino effect is if we slip past these actual individual deadlines. Right now, we have, if everything were to go our way, I think we would hit the deadline of July 2024 without any problem. But that hasn't been the case thus far. We continue to face headwinds on a number of different avenues, and we just need to be prepared that we will continue to face headwinds and have contingency plans to address those.
Thank you. Any other questions? The life of a CIO is not an easy one. Any questions? Thank you, David. It's a great presentation. And we're pleased to be able to give you more than 32 seconds. Let's move on to capital planning, an issue of great concern to all of us. And I think the Chancellor or Ryan or both will kick this off.
I think I was going to kick off the campus presentations. I don't know if Carolyn McDonough has a report before we get to that.
I am here and willing to give a brief on the capital project status report and the 2018 bond project update if you'd like. Okay, thank you. So yeah, in the report I'll be brief as usual. The report in the board materials is reflecting 38 projects in the capital project status that we are tracking. At this point, at those value of those projects is over $400 million. 63% about of that has already been spent. So that's sort of the bell curve of number of those projects are in the completion and closeout stage. A number of them are in the planning and a fair amount are in construction. We are anticipating a few new ones to come in the upcoming meetings. So expect that number to increase soon. As far as market impacts from COVID or other market issues at the moment, we are still continuing to see costs trending upward and difficulties in getting good pricing on projects. We've had a few recent bid busts, I dare say, with a few projects that came in much higher than anticipated. So we're working, these are not all projects that are on this list. As David mentioned, we also have a number of projects that don't reach board level that our staff are working on. But there is at least one project that we will be back to you at some point with regarding the funding for that with UMaine. I think we're anticipating that next round of meetings. Regarding the 2018 bond project status report, as you can imagine, that we're winding down on that $49 million bond. We've spent over $45 million, but we've allocated all of, or just about all of that money to projects, which we anticipate completing in the coming year. And as we've continued to report the supplemental funding that we're leveraging with that bond money, we're up to $74 million total, including the $49 million bond. The specific project updates, I just noted a few in my report of some of the projects that are on the report. The ESCO project at Farmington continues to move forward, and the only update there, I guess, since the writing of my report, the timing for the boiler being operational isn't quite yet, but it's expected in the coming weeks. The one project of note for Augusta on this report is the Handley Hall air conditioning replacement project that came to the board a couple of times over the last few years. And I'm just noting that we are closing that project and removing it from the report. The dollar value, you'll note, is much less than what was approved, but there were some good reasons for reducing the scope there and redistributing that funding elsewhere. Another Augusta project of note is Robinson Hall renovation. We're doing the MedLab Tech project that had been brought to the board a year or so ago that landed in Robinson Hall, and that work is underway. We expect that work to be done this winter and looking to occupy the space in the spring. And there's a small update on the Boudreaux Hall in UMaine, a $700,000 renovation that is underway and also anticipating completion for the spring. And that's all I have for highlights.
Thanks, Carolyn. Questions for Carolyn on the status of capital projects? Seeing none, let's move on. You'll recall when we reviewed the system-wide capital plan, we raised lots of questions, and I'm pleased that there's a new addition to our agenda here in review and drilling deeper. And Ryan, I think you're going to sort of set this up.
Yeah, so earlier this calendar year, as you noted, we did present the Systems 1 and 5-year capital plans. This effort started with the trustees back in 2014. The trustees put together a committee to really kind of start getting our arms around capital planning and moving in this direction of developing not just 1-year capital plans, and I use that term loosely, what we were putting together back then, but also 5-year capital plans and really a vision for the future of the system. That at the time was led by a couple of trustees, a couple of FFT chairs, Norm Fournier, Carl Turner, two of my favorite people on the planet. So excited that work is still going forward. The presentations this summer were great. But it was a lot of information we threw at you, $1.2 billion worth of information to be exact. So in conversations with the chair and with Trustee Cates, we agreed that we would set aside a little bit of time at each of our FFT meetings on a going forward basis so that campuses could come forward, highlight kind of what some of those priorities are buried within all of those rows and rows on an Excel spreadsheet, and an opportunity for the trustees to be able to ask questions, either specific ones or even kind of larger, what direction we're heading in. continuing with kind of the theme of the morning, I want to express my appreciation to both Fort Kent and Presque Isle that agreed to go first. Those two campuses will go today, and we'll have another campus at the next meeting, and we plan to go through with that out through the rest of the fiscal year, and then we'll start the cycle over again next year. So with that, I can't remember who's going first, but I'm going to turn it over to Pam, it looks like, and President Hadeen.
Good morning. We are pleased to share the UMFK capital plan with you this morning. CBO Pam Ashby will describe the details of past accomplishments related to our capital plan, current state of UMFK facilities, and the funding plan for the next major projects. Pam?
Thank you, President Hadeen. The context of our plan for the next 5 years really begins with the story of the past 5 years. 5 years ago, we had a brand new master plan. The first 4 elements called for a new building on Pleasant Street to be a visual presence, welcoming people to campus and relocating offices from various aging residential style houses, creating an open space between the new building and the sports center, visually uniting campus and creating better pedestrian student access from the lodge to the academic buildings, Fox Auditorium and Student Center, which included renovations of Fox Auditorium, and Sear Hall renovations, replacing the outdated second-story greenhouse and addressing deferred maintenance issues. 5 years ago, we also had an FY18 current need, which is deferred maintenance, of $10.6 million, an FY18 net asset value of 53%, and a system-wide call to reduce square footage. Also, in the past 5 years, we've had the challenge of this downward enrollment trend, which most or all of you have seen, our now fairly infamous credit hour history, which will look a little better next time you see it when we have updated the FY24 numbers. Yet during this time, you can see the green in the light green columns, the amount of budgeted depreciation funding, increasing as I'm sure most campuses have pursuant to your request. What I would really like for you to notice here is the dark green, which is what we have actually invested by the end of each year. Every year we invested more than budgeted, and in the last couple of years have approached 100% depreciation funding, a proven commitment to facilities. This is a slide from Gordian. Please notice the increase over the past 5 years in our existing space capital investment. But to really address all the issues outlined in a meaningful way, we needed a comprehensive plan, leveraging funding sources and maximizing opportunities, renovation through replacement plus space reduction. This version of explanation is directly from our FY22 budget presentation. We used a combination of funding from the UMS Space Reduction Initiative, a state of Maine bond, a sale of property, and a plan for renovation through replacement in order to target our properties with some of the lowest net asset values and high asset reinvestment needs. Upon execution, this plan produced a net square footage reduction of 3.9% and eliminated 7.8% of our asset reinvestment need. So, to review, compared to the starting point of our story, of the first 4 elements of our master plan, 2 are virtually done. And you will see substantial portions of the next 2 in our 5-year plan. Deferred maintenance, down from $10.6 to $6.83 million, a decrease of 36%. Net asset value, a measurement that by definition decreases every year under the Gordian model, has increased from 53% to 55%. And square footage is down 4%. To reiterate the story using Gordian slides, this is a 10-year look back. But if you start approximately in the middle, 5 years ago, The green line depicts the enrollment decrease from FY17 to FY22. The gold bars represent square footage. Back in fiscal year 15, there's an increase. It's the main state armory, which had been donated to UMFK and went online as a biomass heating plant, forestry classrooms and labs, and space leased to a humane cooperative extension. If you start in the middle of the chart 5 years ago and move forward, you will see the aforementioned reductions in FY20 and FY22 as part of our multi-year plan, bringing our square footage down 4%. As stated, our net asset value is up to 55%. This is just about on average with the system. On the right, as you follow the orange color coding of the range 50 to 70%, you will see it indicates the need for large-scale capital infusions. And again, our deferred maintenance or current need found in the yellow box is down to $6.83 million. This Gordian slide takes a deeper look at the $6.83 million of current need. To the right is a list of the 15 largest current building needs, 8 of which were starred as being part of the 5-year plan. The deferred maintenance, again, is in yellow, but listed by building. You can see the largest 2 needs are Fox and Sear Hall. These 2 buildings are the cornerstones of our 5-year plan. This slide and the next were already presented to you by Nate Harris. I'm just going to say our plan has not changed since you saw this information. This is the data for the 1-year plan. This is the data for the 5-year plan, which again remains unchanged since last reported to you. Approximately 80% of the total dollar spend in our 5-year capital plan is represented in 6 projects. This chart shows the connections to priorities and whether the project is likely to come before you within the next year. In the interest of time, I'll address the top 3. Fox renovation. The Fox building is over 20,000 square feet, has a renovation age of 53 years, and a net asset value of only 29%. It is the next element on our master plan. I'm also giving it a check mark for strategic plan because it not only provides a space for various large student gatherings and performances, but also is used by and provides a connection to the local education systems, community groups, and as the Regional Performing Arts Center serves the citizens of the state of Maine. Sear Hall, including labs, HVAC, and greenhouse. Net asset value 44%, renovation age 64. 4th element of our master plan. UMFK faculty use this facility as a research base. I believe some of you who have toured our campus in the summer may have seen some students using this space. And we already engage UMaine grad students in various summer research projects. This will enhance UMFK research and multi-campus student experiences. The Lodge is our primary residence hall and built in 2004 is one of the newer halls in the system. However, an age of almost 20 years means the original HVAC system on the 1st floor is nearing the end of its useful life. Also, AC was not extended to the 2nd and 3rd floors at time of construction. The system's fresh air exchange is only to the main hallways, not directly into the suites via the windows, because of course, for safety reasons, the windows on the upper floors only open for a few inches. In both fall and spring, the conditions are unacceptable to the students. We also need to create marketability of this space for summer usage, programming, and conferencing. Our plan includes upgrading the 1st floor HVAC and installing new equipment on the 2nd and 3rd floors. You may recall the net asset value slide called for large capital infusions. UMFK has done a great job of identifying high impact projects when given the opportunity for funding. Using the same top 6 projects in the 5-year plan as measured by total dollars, 3 have already been matched with funding opportunities. Fox renovation has been funded by a $4 million federal earmark, thanks to our congressional delegation. Sear Hall, as well as renovations in the res halls, will be funded by the state infrastructure appropriation, sometimes known as the deferred maintenance bond. The project, which is very important to us, which has not yet been matched with appropriate funding, is the HVAC system in the lodge. We can piecemeal the project over the next several years, deferring smaller projects, but that is a long delay in improving living conditions for students and the development of summer conferencing and summer programming to attract students. We would love to find one source in the vicinity of $1 million or more, depending on the scope and timeframe, to get this project done to reap the benefits of optimal usage of this beautiful building as soon as possible. I believe the one last issue which we were asked to address was whether we are adequately funding operations. This Gordian data depicts dollars spent per gross square foot. The bar chart slightly to the right shows that if you look at the lines depicting the 10-year averages, the UMS average is $6.78 per square foot. Our facilities peers spend $6.85 per square foot. And then looking to the chart on the left, UMFK spends $7.25 per square foot. Let's stay with this same chart, the UMFK chart on the left. The red in the middle of the bars is planned or preventative maintenance. Please note how the amounts spent for planned maintenance, the sections in red, have increased over the past 5 years. To delve further into planned maintenance, not only are we trending towards spending more, but the chart on the right, as well as the title of this slide, indicates that UMFK's spending for planned maintenance is higher than the average of facility peers. UMFK has been, is currently, and will continue to be a good steward of the facilities of the University of Maine system. This concludes the information I have for you today. I will now turn the remainder of the presentation back to President Hedin.
The UMS Strategic Plan Commitment 2 references effective infrastructure portfolio management for capital plan and priorities for capital investment. Even though we have had challenges with decreased enrollment since 2017, we have continued to be good stewards of campus infrastructure. This presentation captures and highlights the strategic work that has been vital to position UMFK to fully embrace and implement the core areas in relation to the major projects in our 5-year plan. Core area retention aligns with UMFK's strategic plan focus area, strategic enrollment management. UMFK has the goal of improving its retention rate across campus programs to 70% by 2028. There are 3 projects in this core area: the lodge, the HVAC on 2nd and 3rd floor and upgrades on 1st floor, Powell and Crocker resident halls, restroom renovations, card access system for exterior door campus wide. Core area enrollment aligns with UMFK's strategic plan focus area culture of assessment. UMFK has a goal of increasing our campus headcount annually by 2% over the next 5 years. There are 2 project areas in this core area: Fox Auditorium renovation, roads and walkways. Core area research aligns with UMFK's strategic plan focus area viable, career-focused academic programs. UMFK will offer 3 to 5 more RLEs, research learning experience courses each year, and faculty will operationalize their research statement. There's one project area in this core area, the Sear Hall, including its labs, HVAC, and greenhouse. We have Bengal pride in our accomplishments. We are also keenly aware that our future depends on consistent and persistent attention to a diversified portfolio that generates increased credit hours as well as multiple revenue sources. Thank you, and we would welcome further discussion at this time.
Great, and if you could take the slides down, that's fabulous. Thank you. Very, very informative and precise. Questions from trustees? Trustee Alexander.
In light of this presentation, what is it that you want the Board of Trustees to do?
We would love for you to find the $1 million so we can do the upgrades of HVAC in the lodge. We believe that upgrade in the lodge would be a game changer for this university.
Other questions?
So is that a bond issue type of investment? Is that what we're doing here?
I think the
Well,
idea, go ahead, Pam.
You can speak to this better than I, but we were to address one of our major projects that were really important, but the funding was to be determined still.
Oh, okay.
I think overall, one of the things that you're going to see over the next couple of years, hopefully, and certainly starting with this committee in January, is we're going to be bringing a lot of projects to you. I think we had already queued up 8 or 9 different projects that'll be coming in January. And so we wanted to go back and kind of revisit the capital plan, give these presentations. So when projects are coming in front of FFT, you know how they fit into the campus's short-term and long-term visions. And so if we come to you in 6 months, for instance, with we've been able to identify funding somehow for this project, we wanted you to know how it kind of fit into the overall plan, and that it was not, although projects will come up and funding sources will come up that will be unique. Ideally, when we come forward with projects, we wanted you to know that it was part of a longer term plan and not just, an opportunity to match some money with some need that we just came up with, a few weeks ago.
All set? And I thank you very much for being the first to present in what will be every campus presenting to us, every university presenting to us. It's really informative. Can I ask a question about Fox? I remember my tour of Fox, President Hedin, and I remember, so I understand the urgency there. Question, can you speak a little bit more about how the community uses it, and do they pay? I mean, I appreciate UMFK's role in the community and what an important resource you are, but is there any revenue generation from all those community activities?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to ask Pam to step in and answer this. I think she has a better understanding of that. I think it's a combination. Sometimes we provide the space because it's a great opportunity for the campus to be able to obviously share that space. And I don't know if, Pam, there's ever times where we also would charge for that space.
We do if a for-profit business wants to use it, for example, for a dance recital or something. We do charge. Often a group like the Lions Club puts on a regular presentation. So they donated $20,000 for new curtains in exchange for an MOU where they could use it for the next X number of years. So it's a variety. It's a variety of.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great presentation. So do we move on to Presque Isle? Brian, anything more to say?
Yes, Presque Isle next. But if I could just take one more crack at answering what I thought was a really great question from Trustee Alexander. It wasn't that long ago, 10 years ago or so, that when we would get approached about a bond request, a large bond request from the state, or we were putting together a proposal, or even when I was in state government and we were getting proposals from the university, we would get the list. We'd have a sponsor who would come forward. Trustee Kane used to sponsor a lot of these bills. And maybe she's sponsoring a $50 million bill. And then we would scramble to figure out how we were going to spend $50 million. We didn't have a 1-year plan. We didn't have a 5-year plan. So often, we love that money. We made investments, but it might not have been the most strategic investment that we could make. So this is really meant to inform those resources that, we've been very successful over the last 4 or 5 years in getting into the state, either through earmarks or bonds or our own dollars.
And I think it's fair to say the concern from this committee more recently has been any bond has to be repaid. And so is this the best use of those dollars that have to repay debt? So that's a big part of why the plan from a FFT perspective is important to sort of think about where we want to be spending money. It isn't free money.
I think we're on to Presque Isle.
Great. President Rice.
Oop, sorry about that. I'm about to share the screen and I will ask Betsy to join me in some of the slide descriptions here, just making sure you can see the correct presentation. Do you see the full presentation and not the slide deck presentation?
We're seeing your slide deck.
Okay, let me try to, oop. Let me end my share and I'll start that again. Well, that's annoying. Sorry about that.
I think down in the, oh, there you go.
If you up, yeah.
No, I'm still, sorry, I'm goofing something here on the sharing.
Do you want me to share?
Why don't you do that if you can quickly?
Yeah.
I think if you press the button down below the Q in Presque Isle, way down at the bottom, or that way, yep.
Stop sharing your screen and then redo the share on Zoom to pull up the actual presentation.
Yeah, I'm having trouble getting in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on sharing screen, David. Let me jump out and jump back in. How about that?
And we can all just sort of speculate on what it is we're looking at.
Yeah, Betsy, do you want to, if you hit stop share on your screen, because we're looking at your desktop right now.
All right, you should be all set now, Betsy.
There, does that work?
Yeah, so Zoom still thinks, so in your Zoom sharing, you're sharing your desktop. You need to tell Zoom and re-click the share button to share
Okay,
the
I'll
presentation
unclick.
that's full screen.
Let me suggest if this third try doesn't work, we are capable of looking at the smaller screen.
And I can start while Betsy's doing that. Let me give an intro. So in 2017, when I became interim president, I had the pleasure of Ryan Lowe saying you need to initiate a master plan because we were one of the last campuses not to have a master plan. So that master plan was worked on and finalized in 2018. And what you're going to see is in our presentation is a number of elements of that master plan that have come to fruition or are moving towards to fruition through the funding provided through the University of Maine system. So that included one of the biggest ones you'll see, of course, is Wadeen Hall renovation. We have half of that done. The second half has to be placed underway. We established a greenhouse that was completed. There is an interesting component about creating a student center and formalizing the use of what is known as the campus center into a student center. Those renovations were completed actually prior to COVID, although the last part of that is a part of the presentation here that has to do with the dining hall. very similar to Fort Kent needs in regards to parking and paving of roadways and spaces such as that as well. Were also important to the plan that you also see note of that. And then I'm throwing this in just because it always makes the chancellor happy. There is notice in regards to improvements in regards to facilities for upgrading athletic fields, and even in 2018, the importance of a turf field to stabilize athletics and increase enrollments and those sorts of things. Betsy, if you want to stop sharing, I can actually jump onto sharing, and I figured out how to share the right screen.
I'm gonna give it one last college or university try. I don't understand what's going on here, but it's like.
All right, just stop sharing because I know where mine is now.
Okay, I'm stopping. I give up.
All right, so let me go to the first screen here. I'm hoping everybody can see it now correctly.
Very nice.
So, and
Are you muted?
nope, sorry, I'm just making sure I'm synchronizing all my stuff here. So, actually, I want to back up. I'm in Wadene. If I can back up a couple slides here, that will be good.
Here's your directional on your keypad.
It doesn't want to back up. I'll start from, so the first slide, if you look on your slides that are included, is I just noted our capital projects and kind of based upon our immediacy of need and how these connect to both our master plan, which then informed our own strategic plan, the one that was deferred and really used as an operational plan and is now being aligned with the University of Maine System strategic plan to fully operationalize. But we're looking at three structures in particular, and that is Wadene Hall, Wadene Athletic Hall, that matches both plans in the UMS Unified Accreditation, our strategic plan, and the master plan. Park and two of our residence hall, Park Hall and Emerson Hall. So those project costs, obviously Wadene, which is halfway finished at 7.2 million. That's the gymnasium side, and the athletic side. We have left to do the auditorium side, which is the Gobbin family auditorium, named after the Gobbins, who did give some very generous funds towards that. 667,000 for Park Hall and 920,000 through Emerson Hall, and that's through the deferred maintenance bond, very similar to what you heard from Fort Kent. In regards to our NAV set asset value and facility age, what we're really looking at is a facility aging infrastructure in regards to those dormitory areas, which are key needs, and to the highest use buildings such as Wadene Hall, which had about the lowest NAV ratio on campus, and so now has been substantially improved by the funds that were put into the gymnasium side. So that gets to what you're seeing here with the Wadene Capital Project that we had to attend, and that began as a $3.5 million project that was fully funded through a bond some 5 years ago, with the engineering that happened with it as a result of the project, and with the increasing costs due to supply chain that ballooned into the $7+ million that had to be expended to complete that project. What we have seen from that is, here's a dramatic image of the change from on the left. You'll see what it looked like prior to the work we put into it, and on the right you see the current state of it as of now, which includes upgrades in all aspects of the audit of the gymnasium. which was as much a necessity of ensuring that we met Division III guidelines, NCAA Division III guidelines within the NAC conference that we are a part of, along with Farmington and the University of Maine system, to ensure that we were in good standing, frankly, in Division III athletics, as well as making sure we had a safe and secure facility with much improved NAV factors. So that connects as well as I noted to the unified accreditation, as well as our operational strategic plan factors in with the Gordian report, and all the way back to the master plan from 2018 in regards to all of these aspects. And then looking at kind of where our projects are in regards to in progress versus ones that have been approved, and ones, as you can see, that kind of, I don't know whether you call that a light orange, the third set. So on this slide here, you see those top 3 projects that I mentioned that are the ones that are in progress to meet the needs of students. Our goal is to get up to 200 plus students in dorms. We're at 185, which is a good recovery of over 50 beds over the last 2 years. But it's really essential for Park Hall and Emerson Hall renovations for us to ensure that we can get up to a capacity of 200, if not more. To be frank, I will be pleased with 200 to 220 students in the dormitories, but that is really the area where we need to be to ensure that we have long-term viability in regards to our residence halls. Also approved by the FFT and the board, and this work will start right after the close of the semester. Our Kelly Commons, I mentioned earlier, that's the last aspect of the Kelly Commons that has to be addressed, that goes all the way back to the master plan of 2018, and that is really looking at the dining area and upgrading that to meet the needs of our students. Then longer term out, we're looking at $800,000 in regards to Merriman Hall to do similar structural work that we've seen in Park Hall and Emerson Hall. Emerson Hall, again, is being completed this year. Boilers in the campus center, and you're seeing HVAC issues, and then the paving and sidewalk repairs, which is at least $1 million in regards to those projects. And then longer out, you heard about Fox Auditorium, Govan Auditorium, I would say, plays a similar role in the community that the Fox Auditorium plays up north in Fort Kent. For instance, the Presque Isle Players use the Govan Auditorium, and other groups use the auditorium at a level that we provide the service to them, but the state of the auditorium really does not allow us to collect income from it and revenue from it in the way that it did in previously. So that's where the $4 million that came from congressional spending will have to be augmented by fundraising and donor gifts to bring that project to fruition, which is at least a $7 million, if not more, overall cost. And then down at the bottom, you see the infamous turf field, which again goes all the way back many years as a critical factor for the long-term growth of athletics at the institution. Following that slide, you get a sense of our one-year capital plan overview, and you can see how this follows the presentation that you saw earlier in the summer, I believe, that was referenced by CBO Ashby just a moment ago. 2.9 million has gone to supporting 13 projects on this campus, as we are not making any changes from that original briefing, and it does include bond money towards our deferred maintenance, although we are not in as healthy a position as our sister institution is to the north. As you can see, our asset reinvestment need is $19.29 million there in the orange, and that current need. Again, basically because of the age of the buildings, as I noted, those dorms were all built before 1970. The campus center, of course, was augmented in the mid 90s. with an original structure that was also a product, I believe, of the late 60s. So those are the buildings that have needed the most attention to make them viable as we move forward. The next slide shows our project distribution, and you can really see that the two greatest areas of need, and we are fortunate in this regard, we do not have needs in regards to classroom space that is not available through funding and various means. So in regards to laboratories or such classroom space, we are in pretty good standing in our in Folsom Pullen, our main classroom building. It's really the mechanical, the HVAC that you've heard referenced from Fort Kent, and the envelopes that we are most overwhelmingly concerned about in regards to that $19 million of deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed. The good news in regards to that, and this gets to the point that the Chancellor made a bit earlier, that we are really looking at the growth of our credit hour generation and the revenues that come from that, in particular from distance education. It would be impossible, and I will underscore this, to meet the needs, the physical needs of this institution in its geographic location without increasing revenues through distance education. And you can see that growth up to $42,000 credit hours projected in 2024. Over the 5-year MIFA, that will surpass 60,000 credit hours, if not more than that. But that is really driven by, you can see the absolutely overwhelmingly dramatic growth of the Your Pace Competency Degree Completion Program for adult learners and professionals everywhere across the world at over 1,000% growth, driving that 75% 10-year change with historic highs of enrollments at this institution. But we're looking at probably 2/3 to 3/4 of enrollments 5 years from now will be distance education. I expect 700 or so students that are students attending the campus in a live setting, and it is crucial that we have at least 200 of those in the dorms. And again, athletics is as much of a driver for that achievement as anything else for those on-site students that are both in our dorms and attending live classes. This is just a quick heat map of where those students are coming from internationally now. I like to quip that we have students on every continent except for Antarctica, and we're working to find ways to deliver education there as well. But we're seeing growth all across the world. We are now over 800 students, and as I noted earlier, we have 50 of those students are international students, and that's expected to grow to 100 students. Again, the challenge with this is all of those students, wherever you are, this is the most democratic program in terms of tuition of any program in the university main system, or I would say in New England. Everyone pays the same flat fee regardless of your geographic location. So whether you are in Perth, Andover, just across the border, you're in Presque Isle, or whether you're in Beijing, and we have students in all of those locations, they pay the same flat fee per session of the Your Pace programming. That is both a great asset to the program, but it also simplifies that process to the point where we know we need over 2 times the number of those students to equal the students that would be paying students both in the dorms and on site, either in-state students or students in our dormitories. Sorry, I lost my mouse for a second. So as you can see, we do not have enough allocated at present to our preventive maintenance. really equaling 2.5% of our budget at 636,000, a little bit more. That really needs to grow dramatically, and the growth of the online programming will allow us to attend to that. It's really, it's a matter of scale, but the best model I can think of in that regard is the SNHU model, which has invested countless millions into its physical location, which serves about 1,300, 1,400 students. They have the very best facilities, but that is made possible because of the distance education. So we're looking at a scalable version of that. Also notice that this is a challenge because, as I noticed before, in meeting our facilities operations and maintenance, and which is why we're addressing student-facing facilities first and foremost. That our facilities are in the main more than 50 years old. Even ones that are not are also getting at an age where we have to have concern about deferred maintenance, such as Gentile Hall, which just celebrated its 20th anniversary. And we're looking at extended maintenance in that regard. Finally, you get a sense of our life cycle needs in this regard, and we have made improvements here in regards to the net asset value. Again, I believe this is a slide that you saw this past summer, but you really see where our asset reinvestment has to occur and how critical that is in regards to growing our paying tuition rates at a distance education. So our future initiatives include taking a look at, in regards to facility realignments. Again, this has been brought to FFT previously. The most important work is looking at our relationship with a partner for the Holton Higher Education Center, which is upcoming in the next couple of months, and the dispensation of Skyway Hall. We've already redistributed a number of those properties to local agencies over the past several years. That is the last major facility that is located over 2 miles from our campus that we really have to ensure can be handed over to an appropriate and appropriately aligned institution, as is written by the Department of Education in our use of that building. Also notice that our changes in gross square footage over the last 10 years has led to a lessening of our institutional square footage by 25,000 square feet. That will be increased by one of the last items that doesn't show up on these past slides, but really needs to be addressed and was also noted in our master plan of 2018. And that is what happens to Normal Hall, which we are now re-emptying. It's provided our swing usage during the Wadeen Hall renovations. That is now being emptied out again, and the dispensation of that building, which probably means demolition, will help with our overall statistics that you've seen here in this presentation, and help with that reduction of square footage as a facility that no longer has the institutional need that it did originally. So potential projects coming to the FFT, that will be the space reduction and facility reduction I just mentioned. That will be in December or January. The approved project in Emerson Hall is coming to completion, and then the dining hall in Kelly Commons, which starts at the holiday break in December, leading into a necessary request for the replacement of those boilers in Kelly Commons, which is a significant expense. And so that will be the last part of the project of the Kelly Commons area that again dates back to the master plan elements of 2018. Happy to take any questions, and my apologies as I stop sharing here for the like a fluey with my computer. Usually I'm pretty good at navigating that, moving from the presentation screen from the other screen, but my apologies for that.
You're forgiven, especially since you got out of it very quickly. Trustee McMahon.
Ray, just a quick comment. Is there any cooperation with Northern Maine Community College when you think about the master plan? And I'm thinking in terms of space for the public to use for recitals and things like that. It would not seem to make sense from a taxpayer viewpoint to have you having space and to having Northern Maine Community College having space. So is there any cooperation there that you can talk about?
President Crowley and I have had discussions, particularly since COVID, about the use of that space. I'll give you two examples. One, we had discussions of Wadeen Hall as I talked with him about the money that we had allocated to the gymnasium that we just had to do, and then the opportunity with this earmark that really mirrors the Fox Auditorium, and his support for us doing putting into the work to renovate our auditorium alleviates his need to do any work on his campus. So that was something that we agreed and recognized. NMCC would not pursue that kind of those sort of options, because those are ones that we already had the space needed to be renovated, and that we could also provide to NMCC the use of the auditorium. So we have an informal agreement for mutual use of the Govan Auditorium once it's done, but that will be formalized. Another example is on their side of developing the early childhood center, which will include daycare. And as you've probably read in the news, daycare is a massive problem in the county right now. And our ability for our students to access their daycare center is absolutely critical. It saves us hundreds of thousands of dollars on this campus to have to provide that, which is an increasingly pressing need. And our ability to use their facilities is critical in that. So those are two areas, Trustee McMahon, where we've had those discussions, and I expect us to have further ones. That would include, again, this is, I don't want to call it pie in the sky, but it's very future oriented. Should we have the opportunity to invest in a turf field, we've already had discussions that the community college would have access and use of that turf field, as would the local school district. So those are all things that would be communal communal benefit and communal gain. And I think we are coordinating much more on those sorts of things, so we don't both end up with, for instance, exercise facilities. It is awesome that we have Gentile Hall with a pool. It is incredible that NMCC has its own exercise fitness facilities, but that's obviously duplicative in a way that both of our institutions, neither of our institutions can afford to do that in the future. And we both recognize that.
I'm withholding my questions about turf fields. Any other questions?
We'll let you hear from Farmington before you can go into more questions about turf fields if you want.
Trustee Alexander.
Fort Kent and Presque Isle institutionally, an hour apart, commuting wise.
On a great day. On a bad day, it's more like 2 hours apart, but
well,
yes.
fair enough. Has there been any discussion about the potential for sharing resources between the two universities in terms of not duplicating athletics or not allowing? I mean, I'm aware of the Zoom option that would allow sharing of coursework and faculty, but I'm trying to think of whether the structures, the buildings, the investments had any ability to be coordinated in that way.
I'll let the chancellor answer that first because his hand is up. So
what I would say to that, and I know sometimes there's a disconnect, but our athletic programs, particularly at our small universities, are responsible for bringing about a significant portion of the population. And I know that we are sometimes dismissive of field conditions or light conditions or anything else, But part of that is that we have to be competitive with other teams in our leagues or other other leagues that people might be visiting. So so on that one, I think that's a very tough one. I think if you were to pull sports and try to operate them on a cooperative basis, we would have league problems, and B, we would have population problems. So I would make that for probably both of the presidents. I think would it be in agreement with my summary there. These are institutions that play one another as well. By the way, we should point that out. And I won't ask who's winning and who's losing, but that that 1 hour drive, which can, and I've done the 2 hour version in snowstorms, is a bigger divide than we might otherwise think, and quite frankly, fairly dangerous a good portion of the year. So on the other hand, I think that both of these institutions should be doing more together online, and I believe we're moving them in the direction to do that. I'll say it again, that these institutions are going to depend on online education to be the underpinning of in-classroom education.
Yeah, I would add to that, not just online, but synchronous, whether you call it HyFlex or whether you call it hybrid, using synchronous education through Zoom is increasingly important, because I think our ability to use each other's faculty resources as well as staff and office resources is going to be incredibly important for these two institutions. A great example of that, I mentioned it previously, the health administration program that was approved as part of a federal grant at my institution. We lost a full-time faculty member to an unnamed private college down to the south, so I'll just put it that way. It is the full-time faculty in the nursing program that are able to bring that program to fruition into a modality in the Europace competency-based program that will be competitive in a national market. That's a great example of using the resources with those faculty, full-time faculty at Fort Kent, to meet the needs of a program that is already approved and curricularly on the books here, and being prepared in a competency modality. I mean, we also have the nursing program is the greatest example of a program that has cohorts of students at both institutions. The full-time faculty at Fort Kent either live in Presque Isle or Caribou and can make those drives and actually serve the students at both institutions by means of that. So we either have to have programs that meet needs geographically of students at each, and then minimize the need of duplication of faculty within those programs through means such as that, or we need to share those programs and distance programs in one form or another, as the chancellor said.
Follow up?
Could I just follow up? And I thought, I am very intrigued with all of those developments. Absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about them as time goes on. But I was wondering about the connection between all of those efficiencies and cooperative programs, cooperative administrative services, whether it could have, and I'm asking the question, I wouldn't expect you to know that right off, to think about how that might impact the investment in the structures and the buildings in terms of linking those things together in a way that documents efficiencies for all of the funding for our state institutions. That's all.
Yeah. No, we'll need to do that, because again, I'll use the health administration. Those are two full-time faculty at Fort Kent able to provide the expertise to develop that program, and then using adjuncts, right, to build modules and build content. But those faculty, so those are two full-time faculty, and you can imagine what the cost of between salaries and benefits. Those are faculty I didn't have to hire and did not have the ability to hire. So the savings right there alone to be able to deliver a program is dramatic in the extreme for both institutions. And that's shared revenue that then flows between both institutions as a result of that. That's a model for success between institutions in a unified environment across this state. And that is not just Presque Isle and Fort Kent that can do that. That's Presque Isle and USM. That's Presque Isle and Farmington. But we do have to rethink the way we think about ownership of programs and how those programs are viewed by each other's institutions and how students view those programs. I would argue students view programs as programs, and we need to ensure that we are using the best qualified faculty at any institution to deliver the content in those programs wherever those programs are being offered to students, whether it's at a physical site or whether it's at a distance.
Great. Thank you. Any further questions? This has been a very informative meeting, and this issue of capital planning, I think, is particularly interesting and important and new step for us. And I applaud the thoughtful efforts and the recognition that we have really serious budget challenges, and want to call out, President Rice, your focus on Holton and on Skywalk. Tough discussions, but very important to sort of focus on return on investment and how to serve your community while saving money, and deeply appreciate all the work there. Unless there's anything else to come before the committee, you will be in Roger's capable hands next meeting. He will be back, and I think it's fair to say we are adjourned.